I think Tom wants to start.
Yeah, let's start.
It's a funny feeling.
De jump wat in het beeld.
All right. Hello. Welcome. Hello. Yes. Welcome to Amsterdam.rb tonight. Sorry, I'm a little out of breath, just moving couches and stuff. This should work. It doesn't. That's the form.
It worked.
Work on my machine.
Is it on?
Right?
Or ship your machine.
Just needs to disconnect and reconnect and then work. All right. So hello, welcome. Welcome to Amsterdam.rb. We have a code of conduct. You can find it on the website. Please read it once. If you read the contributor governance, you've read this one. This is the team. I'm Tom. That's Floor. That's Reita. Arno is not here tonight. Come say hi. If you see a problem or have a question, come to us as well. We are today at AppSignal, where I work. We are a Ruby and Elixir application monitoring tool. We also support JavaScript errors nowadays. We're working on other stuff, but try us out if you haven't. We have still baffles, so I mean, how else can we brag you to try us out? And we are currently at Hackers Founders. I don't spot dice, but we are at Hackers Founders co-working space. We are moving out in April. We're moving to another place in the Pipe. We are still renting desks, so if you want a place in the center or in the Pipe in 5 months from now, contact us or Hackers Founders directly. It's always nice to sit in a space with other people. Time for drinks until a arbitrary time, which was left over from my other slides. Today we have two speakers. Peter, who will talk about Ruby, Kubernetes, and how to make it help people's lives better. That is the first presentation, and then after the break, which will say how long that takes when we are there. After the break is Noah Berman, who will talk about the license. So first, Peter.
Oh.
All right. Okay. Cool.
Wow.
Thank you for the big hand for the tech support here. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I wasn't going to fix this Mac myself. So, right. Hi. Thank you all for being here. Thanks to AppSignal and Hackers and Founders for hosting this. I'm Pieter Lange. I do IT infrastructure. This is how you can reach me. For the last couple of years, I've been doing Kubernetes, and it's a lot of hard work. Some people here forced me to make a Twitter handle. Thank you for. So that's where you can find me as well. Okay, this talk is sort of about ops and ops life. Hashtag ops life. So I first want to know a little bit who is in the crowd. So what is your profession? Who identifies as a developer? That is most of the room. That's great. Who identifies as operations? That's very cool as well. Did someone put their hand up twice? So QA people here. There is a whole spectrum in IT, of course. I know. That's sort of the whole point. Any management people or product owners or yeah, cool. Very sad that they're not at this meetup in great numbers because this is yeah. Okay. Is there anyone here who didn't identify with any of these roles? What do you do?
Literally nothing.
I know.
Developer relations.
Developer relations. This is important too. It is.
I don't think they believe it.
For sure it is. All right. So now they have a nice overview of who's in the crowd. Sorry, I have to look back at the slides. I rearranged a whole bunch of it this afternoon, so I need to keep my train of thought. And so, out of this whole room, who is responsible for production? Like, that's not the whole room. Who can be called and might do a 301 redirection to someone else who knows to fix the problem. Yeah. So, and right now, right. So, question for you: are you on call 24/7?
24/7, 365.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
What if technically you are factually on call, but neither the company or the ops people of the company want to admit it?
Come get your free hug after.
You have to?
No, you don't have to.
Yes, you are.
It's free. All right. So what is ops? Yeah. Sorry. I had to put this into your head so it won't leave you after tonight, and hopefully the song will resonate with you until you go to sleep. Maybe some. Ops is painful. It's the stuff, in my opinion, that is never planned. It's reactive. It's not part of the sprint, right? Trying to get a little bit more into detail, and I'm also very interested in the views of this community. I don't do Ruby a lot anymore, but I used to be. I was exposed to it. To be clear, I loved it. So, what is ops? Very often it sucks. It's not visible unless things blow up. I mentioned I've been doing Kubernetes. Kubernetes is super hard. So hard that at some point I started a Kubernetes support group for ops engineers who just, well, mental support, technical support. Everything is new. Luckily, Ruby on Rails is very dependable, and like you sort of know what's up because of the standards. You have a whole kind of philosophy around Ruby on Rails, and I think it's great if you totally embed that philosophy, especially as ops engineers, because for me it's comprehensible. I can sort of figure out what's going on as well, even though I'm not technically a full-time programmer, I would say. So yeah, this is something I do on the side as well, and also the official Kubernetes group. Anyone here using Kubernetes?
Holy shit, playing.
Really? Can I see those hands again? That's amazing. That's great.
Do you want to take a picture?
Okay, cool. So if you need help, you know where to find it now. If you search for this group,
Who is using it in production?
who's using it in production? Yeah, that's the one. Number. Yeah, no, these numbers are sort of aligning right now. It wasn't the same 3 years ago. That's why we started the group. Anyway, I don't have an agenda slide or anything. I just sort of want to do a Kickstarter around this conversation of what is ops and what do we do to these people. Start of my career was in basically shepherding development, the results into production. So I used to work at a medium-sized ISP, which had ancient systems because they started in the beginning of the 90s. Everything was Solaris. And when Solaris? No.
No.
But so basically, I was responsible for the test systems. And the developers would say, yeah, I'm done. And they would give you a WAR file or whatever they cooked up. And I was responsible for getting it into the test systems. Everything was manual. This was over 12 years ago. Everything was manual. I had to do deployments at night because the system had to go down to deploy. So yeah, you don't want to burden developers with this nasty work. So this is for the ops people. So we would have a dinner party at 7, drink 1 or 2 bottles of wine, start deploying production. Was in hindsight not the best plan, but we always managed to get through. And there was a very good social function for this as well. So in hindsight, it was very bad. It was institutionalizing thing. And like we got cheers for working at night instead of fixing the problem of having to work at night. Sometimes you can't work around it, especially with these very ancient bespoke systems that were built in-house like that. There were no billing systems for this kind of stuff in the 90s because the internet was just getting started. So that they built something in-house. So that was my first job. Getting stuff from developers into production. Didn't start as a production engineer. I was just responsible for the test systems. But every time they had problems in production, I was the person who both worked with the developers, the QA people, and the systems people, because I had to get access to the systems and nobody else could, because developers cannot be allowed to access the systems. They don't know how anything works, except for the actual applications they're making. But yeah. So at some point I did join the production systems team and still chaperoned this whole pipeline, which was very manual. Release cycles were basically once every 2 months. So it wasn't like I had to stay up nights every week or daily, which is much more normal now, or at least deploying daily. So I want to sort of start with some observations I made over these years about who are these people in IT. So sort of making this a bit more exaggerated. And if you have any things I've missed, just feel free to put your hand up or shout. So developers, you're great. You are the artists and makers of the organization. You are the truly creative people. You really gravitate towards new and shiny shit. You are very close to the business because they tell you what to do often, or charging or exaggerating a little bit. We're much more prone to experiment and iterate on the results of those experiments. And you are the ones who create the value of the actual business. Is there anyone who has a comment on this? Did I miss something, or did I say something absolutely wrong? Yes, please.
Say you're now mostly picturing the developers who have white laptops.
Oh, really? And maybe a bun and a beard?
Maybe optionally, yeah. They'll probably wear a sweater or something. Yeah.
Huh?
How about the developer that just sits in a corner, writes code using an ancient technology that he has known for 20 years, loves, and yeah, you don't really hear him complain. He comes in the morning, writes his code,
And put your WAR files into JBoss.
And put their WAR files into JBoss.
Yes.
maybe, but he'll do it the same way that he's always done.
Yes. He's
But
existing.
he's not excited about new and shiny things.
Okay.
He doesn't consider himself
And this is a very cool observation, and because these are stereotypes, they are obviously very wrong. I'm currently at a client. They developed an alarm system in the 90s as well, ancient technology. It's still running today. Developers who built it are still there today, which is also not something you see very often. People who work for 20, 30 years at a company. The first 2 months I was there, we had a party because the main developer there was working there for 30 years. This is a company of like 20, 30 people. still using a lot of the same old technology, but imagine this. This alarm system was using event sourcing in the 90s. Now, event sourcing is all the rage, right? So, okay. These stereotypes are obviously wrong, because these people also, now that we've introduced Kubernetes there and modern code management practices and starting to roll, right? They're actually very enthusiastic. And like, I come in on a Monday or a Tuesday and they say, hey, I worked on this on the weekend and I tried this MongoDB and it's actually broken. So it's very hard to break these stereotypes because it's so easy to put people in boxes or cages. Sorry, it happens. It's obviously not true. These people have been doing their own thing for 20 years. It's amazing that the whole system still runs. We would all call it legacy. I call it stable, but I'm in ops. But it lacks the modern software controls that we are all starting to develop today, right? So, okay, stereotype developer, operations people. So operations people, we all know them. They're the people who tell you you can do stuff. They're pretty slow and often looks like they're doing nothing, right? They don't build new features. Do they?
Not much.
Not much.
Sometimes.
And they're just there to keep systems running and, I don't know, dust off the fans if you still have them. Ops people, they are not proactive, but they are responsive and interrupt driven, so they love it when you stand at their desk. Developers hate it, but operations people love it if you come to them with a problem instead of creating a ticket. Perfect. Also, they're pretty conservative. They like their old stuff because they know all the devils that exist in that system, and they're happy to just reboot the server every week because of memory leak instead of fundamentally fixing the problem. Right? No? That's not happy. But these are the people. They don't create the value in the business. They protect it and make sure that everything keeps running. And you cannot change their way of working because they're the people who keep the ship afloat. If you change their ways, we're all gonna die, right?
Everything on fire.
Any comments on this? I saw a bunch of people nodding no. But you, sir.
Yeah, but I mean, it's stereotypes, then it's fine. I mean,
Tell me how I'm wrong, because I am.
no, usually, especially nowadays when everything kind of in cloud, or even if it is on premise, then doing ops requiring writing loads of Ansible, Terraform, automation tools around of them, deployment tools to ease the deployment for the developers, maintaining Kubernetes clusters with Kubernetes updates.
Yeah, great. So the stereotype is
Everything.
horribly broken as well. It's not
There
true.
is one stereotype which is missing.
Yes.
Bringing ridiculously oversized best practice tools somewhere where something very small would suffice and say.
Oh, but developers do that too.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
It's powering this presentation. All right, cool. So, but yeah, it's not that case. But at the same client, there's also ops people who've been working there for many years, 10 years. 10 years is a long time in IT. Do they do Terraform, Ansible, or any of that stuff? actually know. But this is very easy for companies to sort of stagnate and depend on the. You have a product, it's working.
Don't touch it.
Don't touch it. Don't
That's
change it.
completely true, especially in case of ISPs.
This is not an ISP, the company I'm talking about. Yeah. And well, at the ISP as well, they were very, very. This was an ITIL kind of company. Who knows ITIL? Okay. Okay. This is sort of good, I think. Nobody knows it. But then they would have a CAP, which is a change advisory board. They would meet every Friday, and they would discuss what changes they could do on the live systems for the next month. If you have a very complex system that you actually don't control or are very scared to change, because every time you change it breaks, then yeah, you probably need a change advisory board, because to get everyone in the room, can I touch the system? No, you can't, because
There's a sticky on there.
yeah, we tried.
Don't touch this.
We tried it a year ago, and no. So, how did we end up here? The stereotypes that I just described are practices from 10, 20, 30 years ago. This is old stuff. This is not what we're doing anymore. We cannot do this anymore because our systems, systems, I mean the entire system of application, included as well, that's part of the whole system, is getting way more complex. We are not running CRUD applications, but we're running Kafka clusters and God knows what. So we needed specialization. Like this started already in the 90s. The systems, like the physical systems, the compute network, it's very complex stuff. You don't want to burden developers with that. So you had specialized teams, and they would take care of that, and the application people would take care of the business needs. That's sort of how we got into this ops and dev split. And of course, things are changing fast. We cannot, have this department split because then we cannot, move as fast as the market demands, basically. Not that we should cater to every whim of the market. And my personal observation is that things just keep moving faster, and at some point we do need to hit the brakes again. But ops changed. Ops moved, in my opinion. Like you mentioned, we are doing infra as code, Puppet, Chef, Ruby, hey, Ansible, Terraform, Docker. If you're in infrastructure management and you haven't heard of any of these things, you've been sleeping on the job, and should probably work on that. We do continuous integration and continuous delivery now, which basically means automatic tests after your code pushes and all of this stuff. And there are people that basically made the bold statement, like, infra people know how to code now. If you call declarative state, which is Chef of Ansible not so much. That's declared state, and then things will actuate on it and for your infrastructure. Let's say ops moved. They are not people who, they have to deploy a new server, install a new server manually, and add a new YAML repo, and so on. Right? Can we agree on this? I know not every ops person has moved, but they will soon be done. So, developers. What I see, of course, in the end, if the application, if there was an actual problem with the application, developers will always be called. But let's say 20 years ago, it was definitely acceptable if they were not reachable for a week. But right now, you need to share your knowledge of your code base as well, so people can pick up after you if you're on holiday. And I do remember clients that were totally fine with to have a completely broken production system for a week, or something that just kept adding more and more failures to supply lanes and so on. We'll fix it after. In the meantime, the customers have to wait. This is no longer how we do these things. So, application people also definitely moved, and you are all at the right place. If you're doing Ruby on Rails development, it's such an opinionated system. You're doing most of the things already right by default. I'm really happy with that. A 12-factor app is basically Ruby on Rails for me. It's close enough. I don't know a lot of application frameworks that do this a lot better. Don't roll don't roll your eyes at me.
Like frameworks that do it better?
Are there?
Sector app? Awesome. I don't know. I can think of a bunch of things that it doesn't do out of the box that I would like it to do.
That's a different story. Sure. But it's, for me as an operations person, it uses the MVC model in a very predictable way. And like even if I don't write Ruby code on a daily basis, I can figure out what's going wrong, even though the developer is not reachable. Sort of. Not that good. A lot of developers nowadays do a lot of their own release management. Really happy with that as well, because so on my first full-time job I told about earlier, where I had to chaperone this piece of code, I was also basically doing release management and figuring out all the interacting parts, because there was not one application that we had to deploy. And they were not microservices. It was basically a whole system of like 12 different applications that all did billing, and they had to be deployed in lockstep. If something went wrong on one side, and sort of had to figure out how these things reconcile in the middle. So I think that people definitely changed a lot for the better. Of course, we also had to. But do product development, and product development includes dev, QA, product owners, designers, UX. Do they know how to do ops? Who thinks so? Who doesn't think so? There's a lot of people who didn't put their hand. Okay, you're downing. Who should fix the problem then? If it's not the developers or the ops people, is it the DevOps team? I don't hear a lot about it. But the DevOps team is not going to fix this thing for you. It's the ops people and the dev people doing this together who fix these things, right? So there's a learning curve here. So I feel safe to. It gets funnier every. I'm safe to say, or I feel safe to say that ops people definitely learned how to code, even though a lot of them already could. But tools chain was there. There's a lot of the tool chain for developers is to do actual operations is only starting to be developed right now. Thank you, Signal. Yeah, so it's a learning curve. DevOps movement was not, and the DevOps movement, somehow the DevOps people are your old infra people, but they're still the same people. There's a lot of people who call themselves DevOps engineer, and they're basically just maintaining infrastructure. That's not the point here.
But also DevOps is not about people. It's
DevOps is 100% about people.
Not about
it's how
tools.
you work. I think it's how you work.
Yeah, it's,
And how you work is 100% about people. And
Yeah.
has nothing to do with technology.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, that said, a lot of hiring managers think I will hire a DevOps person because it's very useful. I have 2 in 1. And but that's not the case because they used to be your infra people, but not product development. They're the enablers for the business. So, ops, and of course I'm exaggerating again, but ops people think in aggregates. What is the health of my platform? All the services that are there. Is there a 1% failure rate across the entire fleet? Generally, or can I identify like a large percentage of the errors coming from this particular instance? That kind of stuff. Dev people think in specifics. You need to be able to know the exact details in order to lead or something. And I will happily just migrate the traffic away from a broken instance and figure it out later. I just need the machine. Right? Okay. Now, finally, while you are here, what can you as a Ruby person do to improve these things? To be honest, I haven't touched Ruby on Rails for the last 3 years, so probably out of date. This is what I did at a company a few years ago. Unnamed. But basically help the dev people as well try to make sense of a bunch of things. So if I put in place the infrastructure to update your own apps after a git tag, and then you get some buttons to automatically deploy to acceptance and then to production, you can do that yourself. Totally fine with it. You know the application much better than me as a developer. I only know about HTTP, load balancers, and Linux. Right? So what do you have to think about as a developer? That sadly doesn't exist everywhere, except in the Ruby community, because a lot of this is by default, so it's probably very boring for you. Upgrades for ops people are rolling, which means you have a fleet of instances. Take one, again, you have an update, you take one down, you put the new instance up, and that continues as long as the new instances are healthy. That implies that you're running two versions concurrently, so your application needs to deal with that. Any shout, what goes wrong here if you run two applications concurrently or two versions concurrently and you don't think about it?
Database schema migration.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you have to think about schema management, where if you change a column, you can add a new column and then only remove the old column after another deployment. That's basically it. And these are standard practices for Ruby on Rails, I think. No?
I wish.
This is actually something that this company did correctly. But there's blind spots here as well. So what we did is we deployed the Ruby on Rails apps in Docker, and we pre-generated all the static assets, which then they get generated with a random UUID thing, right? The JavaScript and all your images and so on. And what happens is, if you're running two versions concurrently, your Rails controllers will reference files that don't exist on the other version instances. And you will get misses if you don't use like CDNs and so on. Or if you, a lot better would have been to upload the statically generated assets to the CDN, to have them in place before you actually roll your controller logic, the Ruby on Rails logic. Is this new to anyone? Or? No. Cool. We did run into this. So if you get this button to deploy to production, I would do spot checks and smoke tests after deployments. Just do general application lifecycle things, log in, make some changes, see if it works, see if your error rates work. So correctness, these are ops terms. read and use? Anyone? Read is rate error duration. This is what I look at as an ops person. All my incoming traffic, I look at the incoming rate of traffic, if it changed, if the error rate has changed, and if the latency moved. That's basically it. Use is sort of the same, but rephrased in utilization, saturation. So how far am I in my capacity? This is definitely still an ops responsibility. Provisioning capacity and errors again. So keep an eye on your error rate after deployment. Why is this important? You ran all your tests and everything was fine. It was 100% code coverage. It was green. Users are weird. Production is nothing like the test environments. So out of all the people who are not in operations, who has full access to production logs, statistics, everything? It's not a lot of people.
Offset no.
Okay, cool. Or not cool. Okay, so this is what the industry is calling observability now. Basically means, can you deduce the internal state of your systems by looking what is going in, which means the entire raw request, and what is coming out. And can you deduce the internal state of the system from its outputs? The outputs can be the actual request output, but also just logs, statistics, tracing, whatever. Super important if you want the responsibility of being able to deploy on a Friday afternoon to production. Totally fine with it. We should totally be able to do that. No deploying on Friday cuts away 20% of your iteration speed. I realize not everyone can do it, but it's a bit weird that we can. So for errors, you could. Okay, you have to read and use. Errors are the most important thing that you can look at. Stack traces from Ruby are often very useful. You can easily import a gem for Sentry. You're done. Sort of. You can use hosted Sentry, run it yourself. It's open source-ish. Not truly open source anymore. But, yeah. And you will get nice stack traces of your applications. Easy. You will actually know what happened on these exceptions. If you don't, if the don't spoil the ending, man. So also logs. Nobody reads their logs because it's a huge mess of just a constant stream of nonsense. Often, Rails logging is especially problematic because it's multi-line. And this is not how most logging systems work, because then you have to get the multiple lines into one event in your log parser or anything. Has anyone ever wrote a log stash script for that? You get out too.
Need more beer.
This is not great, and logs are there to help you. You can use structured logs. There's a very useful gem for it, log rage. Who wrote this thing? Someone who was responsible for production. And it's taking the default Rails logging, and it basically gets you this. And you can also decorate your existing log lines with more metadata. This is the easiest way to get started. This takes you a few minutes tops to implement in your middleware. Easy to add more fields, so you know users and whatever. A better version of this is auto tracing. That's going too deep, and that's definitely way more of a time investment to implement. Honorable mention. Metrics, super important. Platform automation can use this. So as an infra person who has to make sure that autoscaling and so on works, I need some signals to autoscale on, and it cannot just be CPU. It's often not enough. Also, if the ops people are still responsible for reporting slides and your service availability, basically, then they need to have signals that are more than just whatever your HTTP tracing gives you. That's all often not very representative. So failures get handled in different ways. And yeah, so basically, so ops people don't have to implement it in their own broken way on the load balancer also. And client Ruby for Prometheus, for example, is something that a lot of ops or infra people use nowadays. They often already have something in place that can collect these logs. Yeah, but these are things that you can easily do to help your ops people. It won't take you that much time to get started on it, at least. And they will help you. Very nice. Now, CI/CD, something you need to do together. Ops and dev, it's very often that either the ops people or the dev people, or worse, DevOps people will implement your CI/CD system, and nobody actually understands how it works except that it's one person who somehow automates all these things. Very dangerous, because then you have the power to deploy to production, but you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So do it together and make sure that you understand something. Speak up if you don't understand, it's fine. You don't understand a lot of it. To finish off, ITIL, the very, very ancient IT systems management thing, comes from the UK Army, I think. So it's a very huge thing that was mostly implemented halfway by telcos, these huge organizations that actually have like tons of middle management to enforce this thing because they want to be fully control. ITIL is mostly shunned in the entire industry as being a complete waste of time and not working anyway. But there were some things that were pretty nice about it. Software delivery lifecycle, or software development lifecycle, I should say. Which also means, like, at some point, your service is going to discontinue. How do you manage that existing clients move to something else? How do you control what applications use this other application? And asset management is something that absolutely all companies are terrible at, but this is super important. And CMDB is the configuration management database. It used to be something that you manually would put in your configurations, copy paste it from your config file, and at least it's stored in the database. But these things always diverged. Now with infra as code and so on, your infra as code is the CMDB, in my opinion. So for the future, in supply chain management is one of the biggest problems we're going to have as an IT industry. Just look at all the problems with Node.js, but the Ruby gems are not perfect either. Jan from the process is not here today, but he found something a few months ago where there was basically some gem included in another gem that everyone uses, and it was just constantly sending off private data from your customers. If it sort of identified as a credit card number, it sent away. So your supply chain management, making sure that the software you include in your product doesn't try to screw you over. And I know that it's very hard to vet every piece of software that's in there. At least implement something as what's it called in Ruby world again? That does vulnerability checks. Like there's Breakman, yes. There's bad lists of gems or gem versions that are already identified, but people keep using because nobody's looking for it. It's very easy to add that to your CI pipeline. The ops people generally won't think about it unless they have like also a security team. But that's very rare as well. But at least use something like a dependency checker. And yeah. So this sort of an extension of product selection is hard. What components do you pick to build your application on? No easy fix. Just try things and iterate. Try things, break things, and move on. Yeah, not invented here syndrome. It's also still existing everywhere, in ops land and in dev land. Even if there's a perfectly working thing for your problem, we will try to implement it ourselves, because either we cannot fork out $50 a month to just use some SaaS product. I know not everyone can use SaaS products because of security, but unless you have that problem, please use SaaS product, because that just means more stuff that you don't have to maintain. And your ops people are already very tired, I promise you. Yeah, keep things simple. No, keep things stupid simple. It's the nicer version. Or simple stupid. No, it's not the nice version.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a practice that other people tended to practice until Kubernetes. I would argue that Kubernetes is necessary complexity, but not for every skill. And how do you cross the dev versus ops divide? It's very hard. So for the ops people, we have to start doing this. Give trust to the developers. They are not there to make your day suck. They just want to do their work as well. Trust them to do their work. Trust them to own up to it. If it breaks, stuff breaks. But you will move on faster. You will get a healthier environment. And they will give trust back again when you tell them, please don't do this. And lastly, AppSignal is something that fixes a whole bunch of these problems, because it creates, I'm not working for AppSignal. These types of products are absolutely essential in the modern software space, I think. You need to be able to reason about your system and to figure out what is going on. Don't invent the wheel yourself. Please use something that people very smart already thought about. There's New Relic as well, but it's expensive and it's not, honestly sucks. There's a lot of these things on the market. I think AppSignal is on a great track, and they're also iterating so fast that it's worthwhile to implement, I would say. And that's it. Don't ask me about Ops, but please ask me about Kubernetes. Any questions? Thank you.
Never mind. Yes, we can do a 10-minute break, and then we have that's in